Okay, so again, welcome back. And today's presentation is going to be on the application of data and analytics for finance professionals. So what we are going to cover today is basically a kind of just to give you a quick overview about what you can do with data and analytics in your finance world, in your business world, so that you can take something valuable today. Though you are spending just about 1 hour with me, so I want to make sure that you are taking something tangible, so that when you go back to work on Monday, you look much smarter in front of your boss, in front of your colleagues. So that's what I want to make sure. It's not going to be a theory or whatever you see in Google or LinkedIn. So this is going to be my experience, my perspective, what I typically do in the first meeting with my prospects and clients, so that I do the same thing, so that you get something very valuable out of your time today. So as Zishan was saying about me, like I play basically three roles. So I'm a consultant. I advise quite a few companies in digital data and analytics. I'm an author. I've written two books, which you would have seen it when I turned on the video about on data and business performance, which was my first book, and analytics best practices. And I'm also a professor. I'm an adjunct professor of data and analytics at IE Business School in Madrid, and I have a PhD from ESLL in France and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management. So this is what a couple of people are talking about me in the public domain. Recently, the CDO magazine, CDO by the way stands for Chief Data Officer. They said I'm one of the top 75 data and analytics academic leaders of the world. I don't know what's the criteria, but so I was happy that somebody was able to recognize me. I've written quite a few blogs in Forbes.com, as well as some of the CFO related sites, some you might be familiar with, FP&A Trends and CFO.university. So I've written quite a few blogs for them as well. So if you are interested to know more about data and analytics from the finance perspective, you can also go to those two sites and learn more about my thoughts and what I think about data and analytics. As far as my consulting experience goes, I have consulted for over 75 companies, including some huge ones like Shell, Procter & Gamble, and so on. But at the same time, I also consulted for startups and many small companies, like which are about 25 people. So the range of experience has been kind of varied. But the common thing about all these companies is they have the same challenge: how we can get more value out of data and analytics. So that's whether you talk to Shell or whether you talk to a small company in Calgary with just about 20 people, the challenge or their concern is pretty much the same. How do you get more value out of data and analytics? And that's what my perspective is. That's what my presentation today is going to be: how you can get more value out of data analytics, what you can do to get more results, more value for your clients, more value for your company using data and analytics. Okay, so quick question. So let's start with an engagement, for example. So if somebody were to ask you today, what percentage of the business processes in your company, for example, is digitized, what would be that number be? Is it less than 25% you believe is digitized? 25 to 50. Okay, the third one, there is a typo. It is actually 50 to 75. Please correct that. And the last one, over 75. So which one would you think is happening in your company? What is the level of digitization that's happening in your companies? Please type your answers in the chat box while I quickly correct this typo. $40, $50, $25, $3. Good. 25. Okay. So let me go back and start sharing my screen. So the answer is 93%. The research says that as of today, the amount of digitization that's there in the company is going to be 93%. So my view is that it will never touch 100, but there is going to be two things that are happening. One is the degree of digitization, which is how intense are we going, how deep we are going with digitization. Next, number two, with workflow, so on and so forth. And next, number two, little bit of jump as well. From 93, we might go to 97 or 98, but I'm very sure that reaching 100% digitization or automation is going to be impossible. So what does this mean? Why did I put this question in the first place? Today, number one, more and more business processes are getting digitized. So what, Prashant? What does that mean for me? The outcome of all this digitization processes is basically data. So companies are capturing lots and lots of data. The research by IBM says that the amount of data that is there in the company is going to double every 8 hours from 2025. So what does this mean? Let's assume that you are working for a company, say you are in India and you are working for HDFC Bank. Okay, so you come to work in the year 2025 and you start your work at 8 a.m. Let's assume at 8 a.m. when you start your work, the amount of data right from the day HDFC was created to the day one of 2025, let's assume that it is 5 terabytes. So when 5 p.m. when you finish your work, the amount of data has jumped from 5 terabytes to 10 terabytes. So this is what the rate of digitization is going to be, an amount of data that is going to be captured in the world. So there's going to be huge amounts of data that is going to be captured. And companies right now are looking at how do we make sure that this data which we are capturing is valuable to the company. So you need to have those skills so that you channel the data in the right way. So that means you need, one of the applications of data is analytics. So you need to get more value of data through analytics. So there is already a lot of digitization that is happening. Companies right now are figuring out, okay, 93% of our processes are digitized, which we have been capturing from 1950, 1960, 1970, so on and so forth. So how do we get more value out of these processes? So overall, huge amount of digitization that is going to happen. And with COVID, the amount of digitization or the rate of digitization has just increased more intensity, more breadth as well. So with that as the context, or that as a background, so let's start quickly with the agenda, what we have in the menu today. We'll quickly see what business analytics is all about. You must have heard about this. Oh, Prashant, I heard about this 1,000,000 times. So what is it you are talking about new? So of course, my objective is basically make sure that the time which you are spending with me is very valuable. I have made this presentation assuming that I am also one of the people sitting in the room. I want to make sure that if I were to sit in this room, is this time valuable? So that's what I have done here. So one thing is I'll give you a quick perspective about what business analytics is all about. We look at the 4 key components of business analytics. Many times when I talk about business analytics, at least to the non-analytics person, whether it's IT or business, they come and say, oh, business analytics is Python, Power BI. We are already doing it. We have Power BI. True. That is one very small component of analytics. Knowing Tableau or Power BI or Python is just 1% of analytics. And we will talk about what are the other 4 components of analytics as well, or other 3 rather, to see what this 100% of analytics is all about. Why so many analytics projects are failing? Is it because they don't know how to use Tableau? Is it because they don't know how to use Power BI? No, there is something else. We will see what those reasons are, because we need to understand analytics holistically. That's why I'll talk about these 4 components. I'll talk about a case study of how we applied data and analytics for a company in Seattle, which is on revenue forecasting. And lastly, we'll do a wrap up about some of the things, what next from here, so on and so forth. So what I would suggest, since we have a reasonably good group or a big group, we'll take the Q&A at the end. I already see a couple of questions from Tony, about 93%. We'll talk all those things at the end. But right now, let me continue the presentation, and we'll take Q&A at the end. Okay, sorry. So if somebody were to ask you, what's your definition of data analytics? What would you say? So of course, it is just like we have heard this story about 6 blind men looking at an elephant and sharing their perspective in their own way. So what does this mean in the business world? So if you talk to people in IT, for example, their definition of analytics is more centered about storage and integration. How do we store the data, and how do we get the data to this common system, which is often called as a data warehouse? So when we talk to somebody from regulations, including people from accounting, for example, their definition of analytics would be more centered about reporting or compliance, which could be a GAAP or IFRS, so on and so forth. If you talk to somebody from marketing, for example, their definition of analytics would be more about KPI centric. So having said this, everybody comes up with their own perspective of data and analytics. When I was with SAP, for example, SAP being a huge company with a lot of products they sell, their definition of analytics was pretty broad. It included ERP, GRC, BI, EIM, CRM, and everything. Pretty much practically what they were selling, they all put it as part of data and analytics. But on the other hand, SAS, which is an analytics company, I was an advisor for them for almost 2 years. Their definition of analytics was mostly about data science centric, about statistical modeling. Why? Because they are selling the products which is suitable to what they are actually designed for. So if you talk to SAP, it is broad. If you talk to SAS, it is more about machine learning. If you talk to Microsoft, they are more centered about Power BI. If you talk to Salesforce, stroke Tableau earlier, their definition of analytics is more about dashboarding. So overall, whether you talk to the IT people, or whether you talk to the business people, or whether you talk to the regulators, each one comes up with their own perspective of data and analytics, which is conducive to the work they are doing or the products or services they are actually selling, for example. So if I were to ask you, what's your definition of data and analytics? Like, for example, Sridhar, who is in the call today, he's from India, and he's attending this call from at 9 p.m. So if somebody was to ask Sridhar, hey, Sridhar, what is it, this meeting which you are attending at 9 p.m. on a weekend, what would Sridhar tell those people? Oh, data analytics is tack, 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 tack. So what's your definition? Of course, this question is not for Sridhar, it's for everybody. So if somebody were to ask you the definition of data analytics, what would that be? Please share your answers in the chat box. What results you want? Okay, Mohammed says that results. I love the word results in what Mohammed is talking about. Decision making. Irfan, great. I'm going to pick the keyword in your answers. Decision making. Samia says about storytelling. Good. Forecasting. Good answers. Okay. So you are seeing just by 4 responses, we are getting different perspective, which is not wrong, which is all correct. We are all getting different perspective. Why? It all comes from the way your experiences, the way your education levels are, or the kind of work which you are doing. Data, as Sridhar says, what's going on, business goals. Okay, good. So let's stop this. Let me go back to this PPT. So my definition of data analytics is basically a little bit broader, which encompasses all the points which you have said. It is basically using data by asking relevant questions to gain insights for decision making. The ultimate goal of analytics is to help in decision making. And how do you make better decisions? Through having better insights. With what? Using data. And what is the basis for this? How is the context coming? It is about questions. So if you don't have questions, there is no point in doing analytics. So when I go for my consulting projects, there are 2 things which I ask pretty much very quickly to my clients. What questions for which you are seeking answers for? So that's the first thing. If you don't have this, then I would say you don't need a consultant like me. Go back to the drawing board and start looking for those things for which you need answers. Or it could be based on your KPIs as well. So the first thing is find the questions for which you need answers. Next, number 2, do you have good quality data in your company? If those 2 things are not there, that means it is going to be a risky project for me to work on. You will be spending a lot of time and energy in working on this project. So make sure that the context which comes from questions is been agreed. You don't have to have a perfect answer, but you should have a reasonably good answer. Next, number 2, do you have good quality data to do your analytics projects? So analytics is all about data and question. Those are the two fundamental blocks. If you don't have those two things, then you are going to run into huge problems, whether you are using Power BI or Tableau or Python, because basically if you don't have good data, garbage in is basically garbage out. You must have the greatest technology in the world and you will not end up having great insights. Google's research director says Google is not great because they have great algorithms. The algorithms Google has, everybody has. SAS has it, Microsoft has it, Amazon has it, SAP has it. The difference between Google and other parties is basically Google has better data. Data plus models equals insights. If you don't have good quality data, whatever the tool it is going to be, you will not go very far because you are just feeding garbage into the tool. The outcome is also going to be a garbage as well. Coming to decision making and what's analytics? Many people think analytics is Python. Analytics is data science. So I look at analytics in a much broader perspective. In my view, analytics is 4 key building blocks. First one is data capture. You need to capture data from your digital processes, whether it's workflow, whether it's ERP, IoT, whatever you call it. You need to capture the data in whatever shape and form it is. The first step is data capture. Next, number 2, data integration. Because in many reasonably big companies, you don't have to think about Aramco or Shell. It could be even some medium-sized company, which is a $2 billion size. Even they have data in different systems. It could be ERP might be running in SAP, or your CRM might be running in HubSpot. You have saved a lot of data in your Excel spreadsheet, so on and so forth. So all this data has to be integrated. So data integration is the second part of analytics. Most of the work in data analytics is on data integration. In fact, when I did a study for my 2 books as well as for my PhD, I found that nearly 70 to 80% of the work in data analytics is on data integration. Once you have the good quality data in your data warehouse, you need to feed that data into your data science model, which could be regression, which could be as simple as a kind of a trend line, for example. But whatever that model is, that model depends on good quality data. So you take that good quality data, which is there in your data warehouse, and feed it into a model, and that work is known as the data science part of the work, which is a relatively small work, provided there is good quality data. If you don't have good quality data, hiring the greatest data scientist in the world doesn't take you very far because they don't have good data. So data science is the third part of analytics. And once you have this output from data science, which is the insights, you get something which is relevant for making decisions. And now the fourth part of data analytics is decision science. So overall, when we talk about data analytics, it's not about Python, it's not about data science. It's these 4 key elements that need to come together: data capture, data integration, data science, and decision science. In fact, the real fun starts when you have those insights. How do you take those insights and convert them into decisions? Like to come to that point, I was doing a project for a retail company, which is a fuel retail company. Like in UAE, you must have heard about this company called ADNOC. Whereas in North America, we have many gas stations like this, from Shell, even private enterprises, so on and so forth. So I was working for a fuel retailing company, which is one of the biggest in North America. They have almost like 900 gas stations in Canada, US, and the Caribbean. So we said, we are going to do some analytics and give you these items which are stacked in your convenience store. What does this mean? Each of the items, the 20,000 SKUs, the stock keeping units in your company, has been classified into 4 levels: Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. Class A are very fast-moving items, and Class D are very slow-moving items, which are basically catching dust in the shelves. So the goal is to reduce this Class D items so that we can do something about it, and so, or even discontinue those products because they're just taking real estate in the convenience store. Okay. Then we said we are going to do a kind of a research or a project and tell you in the last 10 weeks, which of the items were Class D in all your 900 stores. We did this work and we said in 10 weeks, we had 19 items which were Class D. And The territory managers were amazed. They said, this is amazing work. We have been asking for these insights for months and months, and nobody gave this. Thank you, data science team, for doing this work. We want to see which are these 19 items. And since it was such an important topic, we just invited about 5 territory managers, and ultimately 50 people turned up. The whole territory manager groups turned up, and we said about our process. This is what we did. This is where we got the data from. And we said, these are the 19 SKUs out of the 20,000 SKUs you have in your convenience store, and this is where you have class D items. They looked at it and they said, this is amazing work. This completely makes sense. We have been asking for this information for a long time. Thank you very much, team, for doing this. And this great insights. Okay, good insights, very reliable. Everybody agrees to this. Okay, now what do we do with this? Now we have to do a decision. So we asked them, what next? They just looked at each other's face. Okay, what next? Then I said, I'm not a territory manager, but I feel, based on the limited knowledge I have going and filling gas in the convenience stores, we need to discontinue them. So I just told them. Immediately they said, no, we can't discontinue them. Why? Because we have all signed multi-year contracts with those vendors to come and supply this. So it can't be so easy that you go and discontinue them. So this because there's going to be legal repercussions, procurement repercussions, if you discontinue them. Oh my gosh. So that means you might have the greatest insights in the world, but it is not as simple as converting those insights into decisions. So there is going to be more and more work, including procurement, legal, compliance, and all those things which has to be taken care of. So why did I tell this story? You might have the greatest insights in the world, but if you're not able to convert those insights into decisions, you will not be able to go very far with your analytics project. So that's the reason analytics is not Python. Analytics is not Power BI. It has to, all those 4 elements have to come together: data capture, data integration, data science, and decision science, if you have to get full value for your data analytics projects. So having said this, how do we do analytics? So broadly, you can classify analytics into 3 major types. So one is descriptive analytics. This work, I got it from, I referenced Gartner. Descriptive analytics, which is what happened. It's a historical performance, which is what happened in the past. Predictive analytics, which is what will happen in the past, which could be a combination of analyst-driven predictive analytics, like somebody, a data scientist, sits and does some predictive analytics using regression, or it could be using automated predictive analytics, which is called as machine learning. You might have heard about that word, machine learning, quite often, at least in the internet. Then once after that, you want to know what will happen. What are the factors that will make a particular event to happen? This is all known as prescriptive analytics. So of course, there is more value as you go up the value chain from descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics. So let me give you a story. Let's say we have Irfan, and Irfan, I believe you are from Dubai, and say, for example, you want to come to Calgary. And Calgary is a much colder place than Dubai. And Irfan comes to Calgary and he wants to know the weather. Okay, I say, Irfan, I will give you a beautiful dashboard in Power BI about all the weather in the month of February for the year 2018. Perfect data. Beautiful dashboard, amazing colors. You can drill down to every hourly details also if you want. You can go from February to daily, and from daily, hourly, you can see the highs, lows, humidity, and all those things about Calgary. Beautiful data, perfect. One says, good, but I am traveling to Calgary. Can you give me the weather for March? I say, yeah, sure, I can give you the weather for March. But it's not going to be a beautiful Power BI dashboard. It's just going to be an email with just one line where I'm going to say on March 7th, there is a 60% chance of rain and with the high of 15 degrees centigrade. Which is more valuable for Irfan? Is it the beautiful dashboard which he had for 2018, or that just one-liner email which says 60% chance of rain with a high of 15 degrees centigrade on March 7th? Of course, Irfan will say, this is more valuable. What will I do for 2018 data? I can't go very far with this. It's just theory for me. What I need is how can I prepare the organization for the future? Having said this, the value of data analytics is more in the future, because predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics has to do with how you prepare your organization for the future. And when we talk about future, invariably it is tied to decision making, which comes back to our definition of data and analytics. Now, coming back to this one, descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, let's take a simple example to understand this well. Or let's assume that we have two people. We have Bob, who is the data scientist, and we have Nancy, who is the CFO. So CFO Nancy goes to Bob and says, Bob, can you tell us how much money we made in 2018? So Bob says, sure, Nancy, I can go to my ERP system or my point of sale, CRM, and pull out all the data for you, and I'll come back in half an hour. So Bob goes to his ERP, looks at all the sales orders for the year 2018, and he goes back to Nancy and he says, Nancy, in 2018, we made $350 million. Nancy says, thank you, Bob. As a data scientist, can you tell me, assuming that the conditions are going to be by and large the same between 2018 and 2023, can you tell me how much money we are going to make in 2023? So Bob says, sure, I have to run some regression models, some predictive analytics models. I'll go back to my desk and I'll come back in half an hour. So Bob goes back to his desk and he does some predictive analytics models, and he goes back to Nancy, because Nancy's question is what will happen. And he says, Nancy, for 2023, we are going to make $390 million. Nancy says, that's not what I was looking for, Bob. My CEO says for 2023, we need to make $450 million. Is there a possibility that data can help me predict, data can help me tell what are the factors which will help me get this $450 million? Bob says, yes, Nancy, I can help you there. We can run some optimization models and come back to you with those kind of parameters which will help you get this $450 million. Nancy says, that's amazing. That's what I was looking for. Whether data can give me those insights so that I can focus my time and resources to make something happen. What will make it happen? So Bob says, let me go back to my desk and I'll come back in about 1 hour. He goes back, runs some optimization models, Simplex, whatever it is, there's a bunch of them. He goes back to Nancy and he says, Nancy, if you were to make $450 million in 2023, there are 3 factors which you need to work on. Okay, Nancy says, tell me that. I'm very curious to know. The first thing is you need to work on your payment terms. Payment terms with on your account receivables and your account payables. You need to improve your cash conversion cycle. Okay, what else? Next, number 2, you need to put more stores in the market, because the stores location are an important factors. Good. Next, number 3, what is that? You need to put those items which are fast moving, not the class D items, class A and B. Nancy says, thank you very much, Bob. This is what I was looking for. So I got a holistic perspective about what's going to happen. So if you look at these 3 things and the conversation that's happening between Nancy and Bob, it is actually a two-way information exchange. Nancy is asking the questions and Bob is giving Nancy the answers or the insights. So in many places I go, people say, oh, we have to do some basic analytics. Let's do dashboarding. Let's do reporting, descriptive analytics. It is very similar to me giving Irfan the beautiful dashboard of 2018 of Calgary. Irfan doesn't care. Irfan can also get it from different places. Even if I do this thing, it's not of much value to him. Instead, what is valuable to Nancy, what is valuable to Irfan is something on the future. What is valuable to Nancy, not just about the future, how she can control the future, how she can prepare the organizations for the future. So it's about a conversation happening between the inside producer, who is Bob, and the inside consumer, who is Nancy. So analytics is holistic. These 3 things have to come together as a conversation. Not that you put a descriptive analytics people in some ivory tower in the head office and says, keep on churning reports, whereas your people in the field are like slogging about what's going to happen, kind of on cash conversion cycle, working capital, so on and so forth. So that means the data science thing has to come together. What does this mean for you guys? This is where I said about this amount of digitization, where I said say 93%. That means people who are closest to business and data are the ones who are best positioned to leverage data for business performance. So that means we don't need a data scientist per se. What we need is a citizen data scientist, like people like finance, procurement, working on data and business, so that Nancy and Bob are together, so that Nancy doesn't go to Bob and ask for this question. Nancy can derive those insights by herself by generating these questions. Now, the point is, many people come and ask me, Prashant, this looks great, citizen data scientist. I've heard about this, and Forrester, Gartner, a lot of McKinsey, they're all talking about it, and it's glad that you are also talking about citizen data scientists. But I heard that to do those kind of things, you need a PhD in computer science. It is just like saying that to drive a car, I need to be Michael Schumacher. Is it true? Yeah, but that's 0.1% of the cases. How often do you drive at 300 kilometers per hour? Well, I never driven that. Most of the times when I drive a car, it's between 50 to 80 kilometers per hour, or at the most 100 when I'm in the highway. So for those kind of skills, you don't have to be getting trained like Michael Schumacher. Some basic skills are good enough. And most of the cases in the world of data analytics, 99% of them are good enough if you have even some kind of a high school level mathematics. You don't need to have a PhD in computer science or a PhD in mathematics. Of course, you need that. That's just 1% of the use cases. That's what Googles are doing. That's what Teslas are doing. That's what Facebooks are doing. But for majority of the use cases in FP&A, in accounting, in treasury, even in procurement or marketing, majority of the use cases which we are talking about is good enough if you can understand how you can get the value out of data and analytics and use some basic models to derive those insights. So I personally believe the future of data analytics is going to be the citizen data scientist, empowering people who are in front of the business, who are closer to the business with the right skills, so that they can quickly transform those insights into business decisions. So the cycle time is basically reduced. So what is insight now? Insight is basically that unknown element, that X factors, which known will influence the decision. For example, Prashant, I know that the real estate market in Vancouver in Canada is extremely hot. But if somebody had told me in 2003 that the appreciation for real estate houses is going to be 100% in 2022, I would have bought a house in Vancouver, but I never did that. Now I'm repenting. So that unknown element, if known, would have changed my decision. So what is that unknown element? It is those kind of predictions, relationships, correlations, outliers, averages, all even simple things like that. If you know about those kind of things, which will help you make the decisions. So coming back to that example of a fuel retailer, which I said, so they had 900 stores. So I asked the head of analytics, which is the most profitable store of all the stores? He says, I don't know. Oh my gosh. What are you saying? You are head of analytics and you don't know this? Are you stupid? No, I'm not stupid because I don't have the data, because we have acquired this 900 stores mainly through acquisitions. That means every kind of out of this 900 stores, they are running under 16 legal entities. Each one has their own system. Majority of the data is in Excel, which is very difficult to integrate. So we are struggling to identify which is that one profitable store to come up with. Of course, when you talk about the semantics, the definition of profit itself is a different discussion. We will not go there. But at the same time, what is insights? It is that unknown element, if known, will help me make the decisions. Okay, that is the X factor. So how do you get those insights? So two major sources of getting insights. The first one is your intuition. Why should you throw your experience? Why should you throw away your practical knowledge which you have got just because somebody is talking about data is the new oil, data is the blood? Why don't you leverage your experience? That's what I said. Citizen data scientist, we need a combination of both data as well as your experience. When does this insights come into the picture? Number one, when there's not much time available. What does this mean, Prashant? Police, surgeon, firefighting services, they also depend on insights. Do you think that when there is a decision to be made, they're saying, oh, let's run a Power BI report and see what's going to say? Of course not. They're dependent on they make that call based on some experience which they have gained earlier, which could be again be part of data. But overall, when there's not much time that is available, you rely on your intuition or your gut feeling. when the answer is highly obvious. For example, when you are thirsty, what do? Go drink water. Do you think, let me do analytics and see what's going to happen, whether I should drink a Coke or a water or a juice or a smoothie? No, you take the one which is already obvious. So coming to the high validity thing, so, and since most of you are from Middle East, you must be familiar with the oil industry. So I did a project for a pipeline company in North America. And we had a team of 6 data scientists there, and they were working on a lot of projects. So it was like a lot of meetings. And today there's a lot of glamour associated with this data science thing. And at least in 2018, the glamour was still high. Now I think it is a little bit becoming realistic. so a lot of meetings and a lot of presentations and so on and so forth. So after about 6 months, the management was wondering, what is this team doing actually? A lot of meetings, a lot of noise happening and all those things. So management said, can you guys tell us your findings so far? What insights you have got? So sure. So they made this presentation and they said, we collected these nominations, we looked at all these orders which we had, and we looked at the time it takes for the crude oil to move from point A to point B, and so on and so forth. And ultimately, our insight is, if the viscosity of the crude oil is more, it takes more time for the oil to go from point A to point B. Oh my gosh, is it really an insight? This is a physics problem. This is common sense. I don't have to spend 6 months to look at data to come up with these insights. This is already known. So most of the times what's happening in the industry is people are trying to confuse this physics problem or common sense problem into a data analytics problem. So data and analytics projects typically work on a hypothesis. You are not very sure whether what are those factors which are causing this outcome to happen. If you are just doing this kind of projects and coming up with an insight which says that viscosity is up, the time it takes to go from point A to point B is up, yeah, it is an insight. I'm not disputing that, but it is a known. The value is very minimal here. It is basically confirmation of the insight which I already know. So the value for the business is very little here. The third one is one time or first time. So most of you here don't know me. I know except Sridhar and Zishan, I haven't seen any familiar names. But still, you came to this call. Whether you are in UAE or whether you are in India, it's pretty late for you. But why did you make that call? Because you thought you trusted with Zishan's ability. When Zishan is bringing somebody to this forum, probably this guy must be good. You must have looked at my profile and says, okay, this guy has done something. He's written 2 books and he's teaching here and there. Okay, let me give a try here. So did you use your data here? No, you trusted your gut feeling and still you came for this meeting and you are spending almost 2 hours with me here. Number 4, little justification needed. Like you are the CEO, like Elon Musk, for example. Elon Musk doesn't have to justify anybody about what he's doing. On a side note, I find that people who are reporting to Elon Musk these days must be having a very tough time. So little justification needed. If you are the CEO, you make the decision. You don't have to really tell and say, oh, I looked at this data, whatever, I believe this, and I went ahead and did this. And finally, the repercussions of poor decision is very low. The stakes are basically very low. Like, for example, at least for me, buying pizza from Domino's Pizza or Pizza Hut is not a big deal because I believe both of them are the same. So there's not much difference for me because the stakes are very, very low between the two. So when you have these kind of situations, you typically use your gut feeling. Now, data, for example, where does data come into the picture? So when you have a lot of data, so you want to gain those insights for decision making. So in my view, data has 3 main purposes. 1, to run your operations. Number 2, to run your compliance. Next, number 3, to help in decision making. And often the origination of data starts from decision making or operations. So let me give you an example. Let's say we have Alan and Brian. We have Alan. Alan is in the procurement department and he wants to buy ball bearings. He issues a purchase order to this company called Excellent Incorporated. Give me 80 quantities of ball bearing and the unit price is $100, $8,000. Here is a purchase order. Take it and supply this ball bearing. So he's been getting requests for all these ball bearings, and over a period of time, the whole year, he has cut 1,000 purchase orders. Okay. So at the end of the year, Alan is looking at this purchase orders and he says, is there any pattern? Is there any unknown factor, X factor, which I can glean from this 1,000 purchase orders? He looks at them and he's able to find a relationship. That means the more you order, the unit price is actually decreasing. He said, this is a great insight which I have. So instead of talking to these 25 vendors and asking them to supply the same bearing, so can I talk to 5 vendors and I say, I'm going to give an MSA, a contract for you guys, and you give me a better deal, because that's what the data is saying. Because the more I order, the unit price is actually reducing. Can you give a better deal? So these 5 vendors says, of course, we can give you a better deal because we are reducing our transportation costs, we are reducing our procurement handling costs, so on and so forth. So we will pass the benefit to you. So what's happening? It's win-win, both for the vendors as well as for Alan, because he's going to leverage the economies of scale. But where did this process start? Did Alan start with saying, oh, my job is to derive insights? No, he started with the process of compliance. He wanted to issue a purchase order. Why? A purchase order has got 2 main functions. One, it's an operational document because he wants to see when it has been issued, when the parts are coming, so on and so forth. And at the same time, the purchase order is also a compliance document because that's a legal document that's binding the 2 counterparties here. So most of the time, the data origination often starts with the compliance or the operations and rarely with an objective of decision making. So typically companies glean those insights from the operations and compliance activities to be used for making better decisions. Next, number 2, when the hypothesis is complex. That means there is a cognitive limitations we have in our brain. So we can process some amount of information or variables simultaneously. And people call this as a kind of a magic number. So my question to you, what do you think is the amount of information the human brain can simultaneously process at a time? Type your answers in the chat box. What do you think is the amount of information the human mind or brain can simultaneously process? So when do you come to a situation, oh my gosh, I can't think about this. This is too complex. When do you reach that threshold? What's your gut feeling? What do you think is that number? Is it 25? Is it 100? Is it 1 million? Is it 1? What is that number? 4. Okay, Sunil, good. 4. Irfan says 1,000. Okay. Okay. 1, 3. Okay, let's stop here. So if you can, Harvard, there was a professor in Harvard called George Miller. He did a study which is called as a magic number. You can Google it after this presentation. And he says the amount of information the human mind can simultaneously process is 7 plus or minus 2. So that means between 5 and 9 is the amount of information the human mind can simultaneously process. So what does this mean? So suppose, let's say you have a hypothesis which says, for example, your net working capital is based on 25 factors. That means it's very difficult for the human mind to comprehensively process this. So you need machines, you need software to process it. So that's where the data comes into the picture, because your intuition has got a kind of a limitations to work onwards. So that's where you need the data to help you make better and holistic decisions. And the last one, when there is varied opinions or biases on the course of action. Let's take, for example, we have the case about customer service. Okay, everybody wants to serve the customer. Customer is the king. Okay, finance also agrees, marketing also agrees. So marketing goes to production and says, hey guys, we are to serve the customer. Keep on producing it so that we stock our inventory, so that when somebody is asking for this widget, we immediately deliver it. Finances, hold on, it doesn't work like that, because if you keep on producing it, our finances will go for a toss. So we need to strike a balance between how much we keep in the inventory versus how much money we have. We can't be unidimensional and keep on producing it, because to produce all those things we need money. Okay, now I know who is right. Is marketing right or finance right? Both of them look talking very sensible stuff here. So let's talk to data and see who is right here and figure out what is that safety stock level so that finance is also happy, marketing is also happy, and we can satisfy the customer and make him the king. So when there is varied opinions or biases, we go with data. That's what happens in most of the companies, at least the data-driven companies. And overall, companies which are focused more on digital and data, MIT did a study and they said they are highly productive, they go higher percentage in return and so on and so forth. There's also one more report which I read from either McKinsey or Forrester, which says that EBITDA increase is going to be about 10% when companies are more focused on data and digital thing. So bottom line, when you have to work on insights, you need a combination of both intuition and data. So if you just work on intuition, it will not be good. If you just rely on data, that's also not good. You need a combination of both science and intuition to make this happen. So coming to this one story about during hurricane warnings, people generally buy essential items, milk, water, eggs, bread, and so on. So Walmart did a study and they said, what are people buying during the hurricane season? They found that people are buying strawberry Pop-Tart, which is a dessert, basically, ice cream kind of thing. Oh my gosh, why would somebody buy an ice cream during a crisis? That looks really weird. I can understand. My science says that. My common sense says that people buy water, milk, eggs. That makes sense. Why would somebody buy a strawberry Pop-Tart during a crisis? All said and done, that's what the data is telling. People are buying strawberry Pop-Tarts. Now, what Walmart is doing, and of course all other retail companies as well, now when there's a hurricane warning, they're stocking their shelves with strawberry Pop-Tarts as well and increasing the customer service, revenue, so on and so forth. So what we need to get good insights, you need a combination of your science and intuition plus data and analytics to make it holistic. So I wrote a Forbes article on this. So after the class, if you have time or if you have interest, so Google about me. You can just Google Forbes and Prashant. You will see all the articles which I've written in Forbes. You can read it. You'll get an idea about what I think about data and analytics apart other than what I talked today, and you can go from there. So what is the value of data and analytics? It's about visibility. Why visibility? Because visibility drives performance and performance creates value. So I was talking to a VP of data and analytics of an oil company. He says, Prashant, you are talking this is a lot about analytics and so on and so forth. If I have analytics, do I need a pump check for to get oil? I said, analytics is not a replacement for your pump check. To get oil from the ground, you need pump check. But to make sure that the pump check works efficiently, you need to capture the data about your pump check so that you can get more value of analytics. So analytics is not a replacement for your pump check. Analytics is a complement for your pump check because visibility gives performance and performance creates value. So the bottom line of analytics, well, if you are in a retail company, you still need to sell products and services, but it will give you the right visibility to find out which is the most profitable store, which is a class D item where you can focus on. And even if you want to terminate this, you can work with your vendors and start working on a kind of plan to terminate the contract, so on and so forth. Because if you don't have visibility, there is no way you can derive performance and value. And I don't have to preach this to you. You are all finance people. You work on data and KPIs all the time. You must be. I'm saying the same way in a different, same thing in a different way. So, having said this, let's talk about the 4 key components of data analytics. Okay, Prashant, you have set up a platform now. Now I'm curious to know what are these 4 key components of data and analytics. So I'll just pause here for a second and see if there is any question which you want to ask me at this point in time. And if I say something is coming, I will say, hey, it's coming later. Sohail says that to record the session, I think it is Sohail, I think it's Zishan is recording it. Zishan, am I right?
Yeah, it's recording and the recording will be shared with all the participants.
Okay, good. So far, based on what we have covered, which is what analytics is all about, the 4 key, the 3 parts of analytics, so on and so forth, what I have discussed. Any questions or thoughts? You can even share your thoughts. I'm here to learn as well. Just because I'm talking doesn't mean that I know everything. I'm here to learn from you guys as well.
Yeah, and even you can just unmute yourself. That's why to make it highly interactive, you have the option to unmute and directly you can speak also with Prashant, or you can drop your questions in the chat box as well.
Yeah, whatever works for you.
Yeah, Prashant, this is Tony Almeida. I'll just add a couple thoughts to your very passionate conversation. One is you cannot forget diagnostic analytics, right? You have descriptive, but the diagnostic is important because that's what people normally assess performance, right? The past performance. What is interesting is we have evolved this with the advent of bringing predictive analytics into it, data science, that we can start looking at near real-time delivery of data. So which means we could have diagnostic associated with predictive and prescriptive, right? So all of a sudden a dashboard can have those four pieces up there in near real time if the right infrastructure is in place. It's important for people to recognize that, because I think that's where it makes a difference, right? There was a question asked of me many years ago. This was actually December, January 2005, 2006, but that question is still relevant, by a major computer laptop manufacturer. The shipments out of Malaysia were down because of a faulty part. What was the downstream impact? And how could they recover to make the revenue for the quarter, as well as customer satisfaction? Just think about the questions that I just asked here are a compound effect. They couldn't answer that. They took them 2 weeks versus being able to do that answer very efficiently. And I think we have the technology to do that.
Okay. So, Tony, I hear you. Okay. What Tony is asking is a very interesting topic, which is about diagnostic. Like, I classified analytics into 3 parts: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. So, Tony is asking, why not put a 4th one called diagnostics? So this is my response. Why I don't put the diagnostic here. Let's go back to the definition of analytics, which I said analytics is using data to answer your questions to gain insights for decision making. The data is a keyword. What is data? When you go back to data, data is a recording of an event which happened in the past. So data is always having a kind of a lag between what happened to the point of between origination and data capture. So what Tony is asking is about diagnostics, the why part of it, why this happens. So typically that why part of it, often in the world of data analytics, is a different area called design of experiments. So you do these experiments to collect the new data based on the hypothesis which you are doing. In fact, that's a huge topic by itself. There is a course which people are doing, which is a 5-day course, which I took on diagnostic, which is basically design of experiments and innovation, which I didn't want to mix it up. So to some people, many faculty members, they put diagnostics as one of the parts of analytics. I have refrained from doing it because basically I want to use the existing data which is there in the system and to predict the past, and of course to tell the story about the past as well. So that's my philosophy. I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do. Some people want to include diagnostics as well. That's fair, but it all depends on how do you want to skin the cat. How do you want to divide and conquer? I'm not disputing what Tony is saying. It's 100% valid. It's 100% true. But I want, when I talk to clients, for example, I say, let's look at the problem in hand first before we talk about innovation and experimental things and the why part of it, diagnostic, so on and so forth. So then the next number which I see is a question which I'll just take 3 questions, and then we have a Q&A at the end as well. Irfan is asking about differentiate intelligence and analytics. So Irfan, intelligence in my view is about insights, and analytics is the process to get those insights. How can you identify data required? Okay, that's a great question. How can we get data? Which we'll talk at the end. There is a new, there's a topic that is coming. We'll talk about that later. So I see, okay. Sohail, yes, I will look at some case studies on internal audit as well. There is probably in the Q&A, if I forget that, I will bring that topic on Customer 360, which was an internal audit project which we did for a transportation company. So if I forget it, please remind me when we come to the Q&A. Okay, good. So let's continue with this. In the interest of time, we are almost 1 hour done. So let's look at the 4 key components of analytics. How do you make this analytics happen? What are the things that are required require to do this? If I have Python, am I ready to do my analytics project? Am I ready to hire some 25 people in my team and start deriving insights? No, that's one part of it. But before that, you need much more things than that. So what are the 4 key things of data analytics? Of course, you need data, you need analytics, you need algorithms, you need to know what models to run. Next, number 3, you need assumptions. Many people think, oh, assumptions, what are you talking, Prashant? We thought the data analytics is black and white, right? We don't need, like when I presented this slide to one of a prospect in Canada, when they looked at this, they thought, oh, the data analytics is like a black and white situation. And now you're talking about assumptions. What do you mean? That means it's going to be like a gut feeling. So they were very nervous when I showed this till I started explaining why I'm talking about assumptions. And lastly, our ethics. This is also a very tricky topic. So when I talk about ethics, for example, many people think, oh, ethics is like a fluffy topic. We'll talk about ethics later. Ethics is an afterthought. What is basically required is mostly Power BI. Let's talk about algorithms. Data, okay, we can get it. So of late, many companies have started to mature on data. So now when I talk at least of these 4 things, algorithms and data, there is some discussions that is happening. Still, many companies are not ready to accept the ethical part of it. Though there is a lot of discussions happening on that, many people are not willing to talk much about ethics. They think it's more about technology. Data analytics means is the IT people who are doing, some nerds which are doing. Even the concept of citizen data scientist, which I was talking in 2016, for example, Time and Gartner brought, of course, it's not my word, it is Gartner's word, but very few people said, oh, we don't want to talk about this, let's the IT people handle it. But now their acceptance is increasing at a tremendous pace. Procurement, marketing, finance, everybody's talking about citizen data scientists now. So all said and done, these are the 4 key blocks of data analytics. So let's quickly look at what these 4 blocks are basically about. The first thing is data as an insight. So you just capturing the data doesn't help you get value out of it. So you need to transform the data to an asset from being its default state as a liability. Oh my gosh, what are you talking, Prashant? We got up in the morning or we are staying late night to hear data is the oil, data is the blood and everything. And now you're saying data is a liability? Oh my, what are you talking? I will come to the right place. So I say the default state of data is a liability. Just capturing and storing data doesn't make your company data driven. You need to convert it. You need to transform it from a liability to an asset. If you just keep the data in its raw state, the default state is going to be liability. I wrote a Forbes article also on this. You can see, I'll read it later, why data is a liability, which I'll quickly talk here as well. So let's look at when data becomes an asset, what is the state of data going to be? Data is an asset only if it is valuable. What does this valuable mean, Prashant? That means the data is captured for 3 main purposes, which is operations, compliance, and decision making. If the data is captured for reasons outside this, then there is a big question mark. There are many places where I go, they say, oh, let's capture data because cloud is cheap. Give me a break here. Cloud is never cheap. And if you think the data is you are going to capture data because cloud is cheap, there's going to be severe repercussions of this, which we'll talk about it, why data can become a liability. Next, number 2, data should be processed. Majority of the data that is captured is unstructured data. That means the data that is there in text, audio, video, images, and so on. So what's the problem with this unstructured data? There is no data model. That means it is very difficult to process it. It's very difficult to write queries on unstructured model. So if the data is not able to be processed, that means there is going to be a risk with the data. There could be a chance that there's going to be a liability with your data. And lastly, data has to be non-substitutable. If the data literacy in the company is going to be low, people are not going to use data. Instead, they're going to use intuition to make their decision. So these are the 3 characteristics where the data can be an asset. Of course, there are many more, but these are the top 3 characteristics where data can be an asset. It has to be valuable. That means it has to be captured to a purpose. It has to be processed. That means it has to adapt to a data model. And lastly, it has to be non-substitutable. That means your data literacy in your company should be very high. So how does the other side look, Prashant? So that means bottom line, data should actually move. What does this mean? Transactions are the ones which are really important. Focus of business transactions. Like for example, most of you would have heard the word master data. What is this master data? Just having 500,000 customers doesn't make any sense when you are just doing businesses with 500 of them. So why? Because these 500 of them give the purchase orders. They are the ones who give us the invoices. They are the ones to whom we have to do the deliveries and shipment. So you might have 500,000 customers, but most of them don't make any sense, because what I'm really concerned is about transactions. Transactions are like the acid test for analytics. Focus your analytics projects on transactions, because if you focus on transactions, you'll be able to better transform your data into the assets. Now, how does the data become a liability? So the more and more data you capture, just because cloud is cheap, if somebody still believes that cloud is cheap, that means there is going to be huge amount of elements to manage as part of the complexity. So that in turn results in increased cost. So today, most of the IT companies are talking about numerous initiatives to reduce cost. But still, the average cost, the average budgets in which the IT departments are going up is about 5% per year. Why? One of the reasons being the cost of storage is going up, because they're spending a lot of time in storing the data. So that's in turn impacts your margin, so on and so forth. Next, number 3, the more data you capture, the more risk you have in managing this. When the hackers attack the company, they don't come to mom and pop shops. They go to places where there is huge amount of data. And today, 90% of the data in a company is called junk data, technically called dark data. So when the hackers come, they don't care whether it's junk or good data. They just go and put their hand, and whatever they can get, they'll get it. So Equifax, for instance, when hackers broke their system, they spent $1.4 billion in fixing their IT system. So that means the more data you capture, there's going to be more risk, because the cybersecurity concerns are going to go up. And lastly, in today's world, it's going to be all about branding. People are talking about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And today, one of the biggest polluters in the world, believe it or not, is the data centers. People think it's about industrialization, it's about transportation. Yes, but the rate at which the companies are capturing the data, it is going to be severely impacted on their carbon footprint. So data centers are one of the biggest polluters in the world. So you can see from Google, Sundar picture is post here, why Google is working on renewable energy, why they are looking at optimizing the data centers, because in the next few years, Google and Microsoft would be listed as one of the top polluters in the world, along with probably the oil companies. And now coming to the oil companies, for example, this is what I did as part of my research of 2 big Canadian oil companies, Suncor and Crescent Energy. So if you look at, for example, this is all based on open data, publicly available data, which you can just get it from Google. So if you look at 2020, the light blue colors, the digital, the ratio of digital to carbon crude oil production footprint of Suncor Energy, light blue color, is just 8%. So what will happen in 2025? It is going up by 22%, 3 times increase in just about 5 years. And in 2030, what's going to happen? I didn't put the chart, but in 2020, it is going to be about 70%. So that means you have the data which you are going to store is competing with the crude oil which you are producing. So that means on one hand, you are talking about net zero, ESG, and all those things. But on the other hand, recklessly, you are just storing the data because somebody told you cloud is cheap. So you can see what's going to be the repercussions from an ESG perspective as well, apart from your cost, branding, risk, and everything. So why this conversion matters? It's basically for 2 things. Because your questions and the data type are dependent on the data science model. So let's go back to the discussion between Nancy and Bob. Again, to recap, Nancy is our CFO, Bob is our data scientist. Nancy goes to Bob and says, Bob, how much money we are going to make in 2023? Bob looks at her questions more critically. You asked how much money. That means the answer which you want from me is going to be numeric in nature. So that means I'm going to give you a number based on a model which I'm going to run, which is called linear regression model. Okay, good. He comes back and he says it's $390 million. Nancy now asks Bob, are we making a profit? Bob says, if the number is more than $380 million, it is a profit. If it is less than $380 million, it is a loss. So I'm going to run a different regression model here called logistic regression model, because the answer which I want now is yes or no. Is like Boolean, not a numeric answer, but a categorical answer which I want. So I'm going to run a logistic regression model. So why does it matter? Because the data type, whether it is categorical or numerical, is going to determine which data models which you are going to select. If there is no categorical data involved, it is going to be difficult for Bob to give an answer. If there is no numeric data that is involved, it will be difficult for Bob to give an answer. So your data type, whether it's categorical or numerical, and again, dependent on the questions which you are asking, is going to help you select the right data science model. So why we are doing it about data conversion is because from an analytics point of view, from a data science point of view, the data type and the business questions are basically help you derive the models for your analytics projects. So this is what the analytics types, which we talked about, the descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. And within that, I classify them as exploratory, associative, and inferential. Predictive, again, broken into analyst, which is data science driven or data scientist driven, or the data driven, which is machine learning, which can again be broken down to supervised and unsupervised. Then the prescriptive is all about optimization and sensitivity analysis, which some of the terms you might be familiar with. So this is what I do as part of descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Just FYI for you. Now the third one is assumptions. Why assumptions? Why are we talking about assumptions, Prashant? Is data science just black and white? And theoretically, yes, but practically, no. Why? Because businesses change. Why businesses change? Because it's an evolving entity. Why it is an evolving entity? Because of mergers and acquisitions, divestitures, because new product introduction, regulations, COVID, all those things. Think businesses is always changing. So, and data is a reflection of the past. So it will be very difficult for you to get the data that is required. For example, let's take activity-based costing, for example. Let's take activity-based costing. I'm running an SAP, and SAP has just given two fields, start date and end date. So I start at 8 a.m. and I put the end time as 5 p.m. So with this particular activity has taken 8 hours. So you look at this and say, did you take 8 hours? No, it didn't take 8 hours. It just took 2 hours, because there is no way to put my effort for example. So that means I just put the start date and end date, because I ended at 8 and I started at 8. But in between this, I was doing other work too. But there was no field called effort. So I just left start and end date. So if you do analytics, you'll be saying that this activity takes 8 hours, but on the contrary, it just takes 2 hours. So in that case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assume something here. That means every activity is going to be 25% of this. Is it reasonable? It is reasonable, because I consulted with Alan, Nancy, Tracy, and all those people, and I got this number. So this is what you manage your things, because there is always some limitations, because the way things are changing, the way you want your answers to be derived, so on and so forth. So no way you will be able to find out 100% good quality data for your projects. So there is one client which I work for. They said, Prashant, we want to have 100% good quality data for our projects. I immediately told him that doesn't exist. He got offended. What are you saying? 100% quality doesn't exist? First of all, I said it's a function of time and cost. 100% quality, it doesn't exist, and even if it exists, you have to pay a lot of money. Next, number two, things change all the time. You are always doing a catch up. But he said, we spoke to a big 4 consulting company, and they said they can give 100% quality data. So I said, how long will it take? They said it's a 2-year project. So I said, all the best, go with that. So Then after the call, I shared these things with them, which is basically what they say is 75% is what you need to make a good decision. AI progress. Today, we are not talking about big data. We are talking about small data. Not even small data, the right data. So we are not talking about big or small. We are talking about good data. So that's what things are going in the industry. How do we manage this so that we can complement our existing insights with our intuition as well? And the last one is about ethics. What is ethics? Making sure that the data is used in a very ethical way. And how does it happen? It's happened through the data sensitivity, making sure that the data is secure, the right people have got right access to data. We are talking about SOX. That means a person who's issuing the purchase order can't clear the invoice. So we want to make sure that there is data sensitivity there. Explainability, you are able to explain the data in plain simple language, because when you talk about models, for example, today there's going to be extreme complexity. We talked about magic number. So how much of information the human mind can process. So you need to explain that model in kind of a plain simple English so that you stakeholders can get to know what it is. Biases. The inherent state of data is bias. And one of the reasons why we have bias in the data, because we are selecting the data based on the data models which we have. So, for example, when you are working with SAP or any ERP package, whether it's Workday or JD Edwards or SAP, for example, you are capturing the data according to a predefined model which SAP has defined. So it would be almost very difficult for you to change the model. Of course, technically you can change and do anything with SAP. That's a different discussion. But by and large, you go with the vanilla SAP implementation or vanilla JD Edwards implementation. That probably creates a biases. That means you are capturing the data that is required as part of your predefined data models and not being open for this. For example, if you say insurance claims, for instance, it's based, let's say this application which has been designed, let's assume that it is capturing data based on location and your product type. And now you say it's also based on income levels. Oh my gosh, I don't have data for it. So that's a risk here. The next one is about data engineering, which I said 70% of the data is about data engineering, making sure that you collect the data in different, in the right format to run your things. And lastly, about stakeholder management, make sure that the data falsification is not there, so on and so forth, so that you do the job which is required for your stakeholders in a professional way. So a quick question. So now with all those things discussed, as finance people, what do you think is the most important KPIs for a CFO? Is it NPM, net profit margin? Is it CCC, cash conversion cycle? Is it NWC, net working capital? Or is it CCR, customer churn rate? What do you think is the most important KPI to the CFO today? Please type your answers in the chat box. NPM. Shreyas says profit. Customer churn rate. Shireen. All correct. Yeah. Most important. If you had to pick one. Yeah. All are important. Raj says cash conversion cycle. All. Okay, good. So if you had to pick one, so this is what your community people selected, which out of 300 people who voted, they said it's number one is about cash conversion cycle. Today, at least today, I believe it is important because there is a liquidity crisis. There is people who wants to cash is a king, which you have heard as well. So cash conversion, just out of because why I introduced that thing is because KPIs are one of the important thing for analytics. How do you ask questions? I can ask meaningless questions, but those KPIs questions have to be linked to the KPIs because the context for these questions comes from the KPIs. That's, of course, the KPIs will change. Today, my focus is on cash conversion cycle. Tomorrow, it might be on customer churn rate. Of course, it will change, but the questions which you are going to ask are dependent on the KPIs which your businesses are basically tracking. So now with this, I'll go to the next topic, which is about the case study. But before I go to the case study, any thoughts or questions on the 4 key components which you have covered? So Sanjit and everybody, Sanjit commented here. So this is like just like a sample which you are talking. Of course, there's a huge topic in analytics, but I just want to make sure that you are going with something valuable today, or on Monday when you go to work, there is something valuable which you can implement it. So tomorrow when you go to office on Monday, it's not somebody talks about Power BI. Now you're talking about, is the insights really ethical? Am I asking the right questions? Have you used the right data to derive those insights? Are you asking the right questions? Who are the customers for those insights? Is it just for theory purposes we are deriving these insights, or do you have a consumer for these insights? How do you convert those insights into decisions? Great insight, guys. Amazing Power BI report. But now what are we going to do with this so that you have more valuable, so you bring more value to the table? So Majib says, you talked about how valuable is it? Is it if you falter on this? Well, that's a great question, Majib. In my view, assumptions are important because your hypotheses are dependent on this. Let's assume that, for example, you say your hypothesis, let's go back to that claims example. You say insurance claims is dependent on the product which you're taking, whether it's home, life insurance, or car insurance, or whatever it is, and it's going to be on the location. Let's say we have two factors, product and locations. And now I'm assuming that income levels are not a factor in claims. Okay, if everybody is agreeing to this, then your analytics is good. But if somebody comes and says, guys, income levels really matter about claims, for example, then your hypothesis is screwed. You are coming up with some meaningless insights, and when you go and stand in front of your people as part of your data storytelling, you say, what are you talking about? You just collected 2 attributes. What about 3, 4, and 5? They are equally important. So this means you have done your analytics, and imagine how silly you would look in front of your management when you have missed out such an important aspect. So that when you have thought about it, you can say, okay, sorry, I have missed it, or I have assumed it because there is no data. But instead, what I did was I used other ways to get this data. It could be through experiments, which Tony was talking about. It could be because I could get some data from other sources, open data, buy this data from Bloomberg, so on and so forth. So, Majib, your point is really excellent. Assumptions really matter because your analytics hypotheses are dependent on the variables which you are going to select. Okay, we'll continue the discussion at the end if time permits, but to Majib's point and a few questions which I see, it's fascinating. That's why they say 80% of the analytics projects fail. It's one of the reasons being you are not able to get a good understanding of your hypothesis. Of course, there are many reasons for it. Okay, now let's talk about a case study, which is revenue forecasting, which is all about measurements, because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, which you have heard about this. So let's go a little bit deeper into predictive analytics. I'm a strong believer in this predictive and prescriptive analytics, because there's no point in giving this beautiful Power BI report to Irfan, who is coming on a vacation to Calgary next month, because what's the point in talking about 2018 weather when what Irfan needs is the weather for 2022. So predictive analytics is more valuable, but there are few conditions which you have to think about. Be realistic. If I'm able to predict everything, there's no need for me to get up on a Saturday morning in Calgary and make this presentation, right? I would be in Caribbean or Hawaii. So predictive analytics, basically, it's about the future. And if somebody can predict the future, they would be really having a very chilled life. But it involves a margin of error. What does this mean? Your job is to reduce that margin of error. There is a joke which says that all predictive analytics is wrong. It all depends on how far you are from that mistake is. So our job is basically to reduce that margin of error. So how do you reduce that margin of error? So you can reduce that margin of error by being realistic. The first one is cone of uncertainty. So I ask Sunil, what's going to be the weather tomorrow? So Sunil will say the high is going to be 25 degrees centigrade. Okay. So what's going to be the weather in July 31st? So Sunil will say, it's difficult to tell me. Why? You just said tomorrow's weather, which is also future, Why can't you say for July? Why can't you tell for next year? So what will Sunil say? This is very far into the future. It's going to be difficult for me to predict. So this is called as cone of uncertainty. You are able to predict things which are closer to the current date than some things which are really far, because there is going to be more uncertainty, more variables, so on and so forth. So if somebody says, for example, look at, give me the prediction for 2025, the first thing which I tell my clients is, let's talk about prediction for 2022 before we talk about 2025. So let's finalize on this before we talk about this. Okay. So there's no point in talking 2025, 2030 if you're not able to predict 2022. That's number one. Next, number two, it's about aggregates. If somebody says, predict the sales for every day, I'm going to challenge him. True, it's valuable if I'm going to predict every day, but instead, can I predict every month? Why? Because I'm going to use the law of averages and take care of any fluctuations that are going to happen and reduce the margin of error. And lastly, with more and better data. You have come up with hypothesis, and you think one of the variables in this hypothesis that's missing is the income levels. So that means that's going to be a big challenge in predicting the outcome. So I'm able to get more prediction or improved prediction with more and better quality data. So you can reduce the margin of error using those three key factors. So, and again, one more thing to reduce the model is going to be through using multiple models. Now I ask Sunil, what's going to be the weather tomorrow? Sunil will say 25 centigrade. I ask Irfan, what's going to be the weather tomorrow? Irfan says 35. Then I ask Zishan, what's going to be the weather tomorrow? Zishan will say 29. So what I'm going to take the average of these three people, Sunil, Zishan, and Irfan, and I'm going to let's take an average of these three people and say the average is going to be 30 degrees. Okay, so that's what we do, what is known as ensemble models, where we take multiple models, give a weightage to each one of them. I think so, Sunil, I'll give more weightage to you because you are an expert in weather. Zishan, I'm going to give you less weightage for you because you just moved to this new place. And Zishan, I'm going to give you slightly more weightage because you have a PhD in these things. Okay, and once you do all those things, you come up with the optimal RFM, revenue forecasting model, and ultimately use that model to predict. Because there is no point in making the model if you are not using it. It's not a theory. You need to use that model to predict it. What is the point in just keeping a beautiful regression model when Nancy comes to you and says, what's going to be the revenue for 2023? You need to predict it. You need to use it. So this is what we did. Science and intuition, where we did a bunch of interviews with the people in the field who are all like account managers, territory managers, and all those people. We spoke to them and we looked at those kind of factors or variables which are important. Of course, we got market field intelligence as well, and we used data analytics, which is a combination of your ecosystem, all the different models which we put together, and we put them in a big mixer called as ensemble models, and coming up with one number which is used for revenue forecasting. So on the causal models, we use regression. Each of the regression models has got a weightage, which we call it as R square value. We give that weightage to them, and we use for the sales forecast. Then on the time series models, we use different ones called ARIMA, seasonality, simple linear regression, 4-quarter weighted average, exponential moving average, gave a weightage to all those models, and we predicted the sales forecast, and we used it for revenue forecasting. So it's not just one model is used for predicting this thing, because if you just go and say, Sunil, wow, what's the weather? And Sunil says 24, but actually tomorrow's weather turns out to be 30 degrees because we didn't collect the right inputs. So it would be better that you use multiple models and reduce the variation in the process and reduce the risk that is involved. That's what is recommended. So most of the models today, especially in predictive analytics, we are reducing the model of margin of error using ensemble models. So that brings us to the case study as well. So I'll again stop here because you might have a lot of questions on the case studies. So if you have any thoughts or questions, I'll pause, or else I'll go to the wrap up, which we do a kind of, we just cover everything what we have covered.
Hey, Prashant, is it possible to go to your number 2 of the components? I had a question there. Can you bring that slide up, please?
Okay, just one second. Yeah,
No, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. There we go. Go back here. So the importance aspect here, okay? I mean, you talk about analytic types. I'm trying to understand. You talk about reports and dashboards. Remember when I mentioned the point about having like almost a 4-tier piece that is a simple dashboard that can be then drilled down from in near real time. But all of these leverage different approaches, right? And I think that's the part that I thought you could drill down a little bit, even if you don't want to talk about diagnostic, right? I still think that diagnostic precedes descriptive, and most analytics that are presented today are diagnostic specific. And I see that many clients. So, but regardless of that, even if you look at that, the approaches for each one of these three are important to understand in terms of the leveraging of algorithms. And I just thought maybe you could dive for a couple of minutes in it.
Yeah, sure. Let me quickly go over it once again. So if you look at descriptive analytics, again, what happened? It's all about historical performance. Just like Irfan wants to know what happened in 2018. Okay, good. You want to know what's happened, but you can't control anything about the future. It's just about theory, just about analysis, what happened. Again, you've broken down into exploratory, which is all about measures, what I call it as measures of centrality and spread. We want to know what is this outliers all about? What is the average or one single value which represents the whole weather of March, for example. Then we talk about association, which is all about a priori techniques, correlation, so on and so forth. And then inferential, which is all about hypothesis testing, which we call something like t-test, ANOVA, and all those things, which is all about techniques. But bottom line here is that the goal which we have of descriptive analytics on the left side is about historical performance. I want to know what happened on the past events. So that's one thing. Next, number two is about prediction. Prediction can happen in two ways. One is manually you're predicting something where a data scientist sits. When I say data scientist, including the citizen data scientist, looks at all those models and tries to figure out which is the one that's the best option here. But once that has been done, so when the rate of insights which you want is going to be quicker, needs to be quicker, faster, so on and so forth, you need to automate this. And this is where the machine learning components come into the picture. Do you think Amazon looks at the prices by looking at, by putting 100 data scientists on all the pricing products? So they use ML, for example, recommendation engines. They again use ML, so on and so forth. So there was one ad which was there in Canada last year. When I was driving, I said this grocery chain, they say they change their prices 7 times in a week. And that was their ad. They were saying they were proud of their how their price optimization actually works, which was like 7 times a week. I felt like laughing. Because guess how many times Amazon changes their prices in an hour? 65 times. So Amazon changes their price optimization 65 times, whereas this grocery chain, they change their prices 7 times in a week, for example. So they are very proud of that. So that's what the Amazons and all those Netflixes work, more and more data. And the last one is about optimization. Optimization and sensitive analysis go hand in hand. You want to find out, again, it's a huge topic here. So you want to find out which is the best value to help Nancy get those things. But Nancy might again come back and say, okay, what is the range in which I want to change the net payment terms, for example? 30 to 90? Can you tell me how does it works? What is the ranges in which I'm looking at the SKUs, for example? So on and so forth. Again, the quick overview about all those things is about techniques which are associated with each one of those components. I see one more question here. Okay. Which tool is typically used for analytics? Irfan. Irfan, again, it's a very loaded question, but to summarize it, I will say it in this way. So if you talk, again, analytics is 4 key building blocks: data capture, data integration, data science, and decision science. So I'm assuming when you say about analytics, you're talking about the data science component of it. So the data science component of it is basically about I would say if you are a small startup company, I would prefer, my preference again, would be to use Python. And on the other hand, if you talk about, say, if you are a company like Shell and you are part of the finance department and where you are using SAP, for example, I would prefer to use the SAP components because the data integration would be much, much reduced. But on the other hand, let's assume that you are a retail company and you are getting data from multiple sources, for instance. How do you integrate it? So there you need a lot of flexibility. So in that case, you have to look at the semantic layers and so on and so forth. So you need more flexibility. So in that case, you might want to go with a combination of different tools, like put the data in a kind of a Snowflake kind of a cloud data warehouse, and probably use a semantic layer, which could be for one of these players, and then use a combination of different tools, like it could be Excel, it could be Python or Power BI or Tableau or whatever it is. So broadly, it's I would say, depending on the company and the preference you have or the functions which you have, where you're closer to data. Finance and SAP, for example, I would prefer to use SAP itself. If you are working with multiple tools where the data is coming from different sources, internal, external, everything, be more democratized. Or if you are a small startup, for example, go with open source and Python, for example. Anaplan and Power BI, which is better to do analytics. So Anaplan and Power BI, the main thing is, again, I would say, I would rephrase the question of Irfan and Laurent, I believe. Analytics, I'm assuming that you are talking about data science. So I think it should be okay. But at the same time, the important thing to ask is, how do you want to use those insights to make decisions? Do you have good data for you? Because the tools are not a big factor. Whatever Anaplan has got or whatever Power BI has got, SAP also has the same thing. So discussing about SAP versus Anaplan is not a big discussion. The main thing you should focus on is on assumptions. That means, do I have the right variables in the model? Have I selected everything holistically? Because why? You are not like an IT person. You are a business person. You need to give that kind of a feel to the data so that the insights are more valuable. You are not competing with the IT people or a statistician. If that was the case, then the statistician, there's no need for finance or a citizen data scientist. A statistician will be able to do this work. But you have that kind of a feeling for the business. So the question which you'd be asking is the right data, ethical, right hypothesis, and converting those insights into decisions. Okay. So let's continue. We have some more topics, and again, when time permits, we will look at the Q&A at the end. And Zishan can also help us with quite a few questions. Sorry, let me go quickly. Okay, so this is a wrap up. So there's a lot of questions which you guys have asked, including I think Sohail, you asked a question on audit, which I'll come to you soon. But what we cover is just a sampler. So we are doing a training program with Hoft on this 25-hour course on this 12-session course on analytics. So that means basically what the chart was, we are going deeper into it. We are going deeper into data integration. We are going deeper into data science. It's not just to take the insights and say we are ready to do insights. How do you convert those insights into decisions? The research by Cornell says that a human person, an average adult, makes about 35,000 decisions a day. So imagine, decision making is not simple as such. It's not like just drinking when I'm thirsty to drink water. It's simple, but in the business, you have to take care of stakeholders, constraints, resources, so on and so forth. So this is a 25-hour course which we are doing starting on March 11th. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Dubai time, Wednesday and Thursday. After work, you can join this session. We've tailored it specifically for people like you, because you will be the citizen data scientist here. And what is it going to cover? Not just data science. It is going to cover all the 4 topics, because on the left side you have data and on the right side you have decisions and insights. So we are going to look at this kind of the analytics course on a holistic way, from data capture all the way to data science, using the different platforms which we are using for different tools. And from the previous feedback, these are a couple of people who have attended my course. I have trained for almost like 3,000 people, and these are a couple of people who have have attended my course and given their feedback. So I'll just pause for a minute here. So we will take the questions only on this course from this topic for now, and then the technical things we will take after this slide.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prashant. As Prashant told, this program is going to start from May. So after the session, when we will share with you the copy of presentation of today's session and as well as the recording. So we will also share with you the link to this page. You can go through it. And we have tailored it according to the need of the finance and business professionals, not only just for the other functions only or purely technical side on the data science, but it's more purely related to finance, business, supply chain professionals. And obviously you can see the participants overview or in the testimonials on our website as well. So we will share all the details, and also the pricing is also available there. Currently, as Prashant mentioned, it's available at the standard price of $999, but there is an early bird discount that you can avail by registering by mid of April. You still have time that you can avail $100 discount, and there is also an flexible payment option as well if you cannot pay. So this course will run for 6 weeks from the month of May 11 until the mid of June. And there will be 2 sessions per week, as Prashant mentioned, in the evening time, because most of our participants are joining from different regions. So that's why we kept a time that is suitable for everyone. So either it's evening time, or for some people from the Europe or other regions, it's the morning for them and it's the weekend usually. And so that's why we are planning for these 2 days. And whatever questions you have, you can connect with us and the program advisor will further assist you. So if you have any further questions, we can take you offline or as well as on the email. You will get it after this session. So I think, Prashant, you have already covered, I think, very well.
Zishan, I have two points to say. So this is one of the FAQs which I commonly hear. So
Okay.
people ask me, how is this course different from other programs? Okay, I can take this course from this university, that university. I see from Emeritus and all those places. The first thing is, most of those courses which are available from, say, whichever university it is, I don't want to name them, it is focused on statistics. It is focused on data science. So that means they teach you about regression, about how to use regression, and then they say, oh, this is the insights which you get. So you never have an idea about how the data you got it, how the hypothesis was derived, and what to do next after you derive the insights. So it's focused mostly, if you look at those people who are teaching that, they are mostly having a education background on statistics. But this course is one instructor in one place focused on the citizen data scientist. So I work a lot with the CFO communities and including people like Zishan and all those people, but this is tailored towards the citizen data science. This is not a theoretical course. Next, number 2, in most of those programs in these universities, it is whose name you see in the website and who is actually teaching are completely different. Most of the people who are teaching are technical assistants. The professor's name is there just to get a signature on the certificate or to basically marketing purposes. Most of the time, if the professor is teaching, it's not live. It is a recorded session. And the live sessions are actually done by the technical assistants. So I have seen this program. I've spoken to numerous students who have taken this program. So whose name you see in the website, you might think, oh, this guy is amazing. He has a PhD from MIT and so on and so forth. But is he the one teaching? No. You will see his name in the certificate, yes, but he is not the one who is teaching. So it's about paper versus real, I would say. Next, number 2, is it about domain focused or industry? This course, which we are doing, is mostly focused on finance, and there will be some examples on supply chain as well, because the finance actually takes data either from HR or supply chain or whatever. So it's the data origination happens from then. So I go a little bit back because we talk about data capture as well. So the most of the use cases which we are talking about is from the finance perspective. Of course, there will be some examples which we take from finance as well. So overall, I call it as financial supply chain. So, of course, now open for any other questions. So, Mohammed, what is LOS for this course? Zishan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to judge. If you can speak, this question is from who? I think Mohammed Fazmir. Can you explain us what is LOS? So, or you can just write in the chat box.
Hi, Zishan.
Yeah.
Oh, learning outcome. Okay.
Learning outcomes. Yes.
Okay, learning outcome, it should be there in the website. So it's basically focused on citizen data scientists like the finance people who wants to identify the kind of opportunities or issues with data analytics. Number one. Next, number two, to spot opportunities or to start where you start your data analytics projects. Next, number three would be about how do you take those data and convert them into insights, which we talk about as part of the data science. And lastly, taking those insights and converting them into decisions, because that's where majority of the analytics projects fail. It's not about generating insights per se, it's about using insights to make good decisions. And Fazmi, I think it should be there in the website as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Sunil, the course content is also there in the website. What are these 12 sessions and what are we going to cover in each of those 12 sessions?
Yeah, exactly. We will share the link to the web page so you can go through it at your own time. And if any further questions you have, you can just connect with us again. There is a WhatsApp number as well on the website, and we can connect you directly with Prashant or whatever questions you have. And registration link, everything is there at the end of the page, and all the testimonials, everything who have attended our sessions. So everything is there. So I think, Prashant, we are already over time. It's I think 1 hour and 45 minutes already. So I think you have nicely covered almost all the major questions that were, I think, dropped in the chat box during the session. So I don't think so.
Zishan,
Yeah.
one thing which I missed is about Suhail's question. So let me quickly answer it. We can take it offline as well if you connect with me in LinkedIn.
Yeah, sure.
So about internal audit and data analytics. So internal audit is within the finance team often in many companies. So one of the things they want to make sure that about the data is kind of ethical, legal, secure, so on and so forth. So that's what they are looking for, making sure that it is compliance with their security policies, regulations, so on and so forth. And one of the tools which we use for internal audit is to leverage master data management. So there are many ways to skin the cat. And one of the tools, again, keyword is one of the tools, is about master data management. Because master data management brings data governance, it brings security. You start early in the data lifecycle. So that helps companies realize a lot of control and get so that once the data leaves the MDM systems, there is more authenticity, there is more lineage, so on and so forth. So most of the internal audit projects, invariably, in my experience, have got an element of master data management. But does that mean that all internal audit projects will end up as MDM? Probably not. But majority of them, yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Prashant. If there are more questions, I think we can take it definitely offline as well, as I think we don't want to take much time from our participants. And anyone, any last, I think, question if you have, I think, Eltaj, do you want to ask something? I think you are on mute. Eltaj Al-Ghafu.
Hi, Zishan. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thanks for this session. It's really very useful. Just my question is there any prerequisites for this course?
Very good question.
Very good question, Altaf. I'll say it's very simple, 3 questions. 3 prerequisites. One is high school level mathematics. When I say high school level mathematics, we'll be talking things like an average. So I don't want somebody to say what is meant by mean kind of thing. Of course, I'll be quickly covering it, but we don't want to be covering spending too much time on some kind of high school level mathematics. So I'm assuming that you have high school level mathematics. Next, number 2, you have a decent knowledge about business. So that means you are all finance people, at least some amount of good knowledge in business. This is not typically tailored for a student who is just graduating from a university. So if he wants to come, he might not get good value out of it. The answer is I would not encourage a student to enroll for this. So if you have good amount of business knowledge experience, that's good. Like for example, I always believe that finance is in a very tricky position. They have accountability for the data, which they never created. The business actually creates the data, but they take the ownership of the data and still works on that. So when I'm giving that kind of examples, I want people to understand, oh, okay, I get what you're saying, right? I don't want somebody to spend 2 hours on that. Can you explain this more? And those kind of things. Number two. Next, number three is the whole session will be done in Excel. So this 25-hour course, I do the course with Excel, R, and Python as well. So this course is focused on Excel. So if you are having good knowledge with Excel, basic knowledge, I'm not talking about macros and Visual Basic and everything, basic knowledge about Excel, how to open files, how to create formula, how to go use tabs and all those things, that's good enough. So these are the three main prerequisites.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Thanks for asking that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Prashant.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks, Zishan. And please connect me in LinkedIn if you're not connected with me. Love to be associated with you, and looking forward to seeing you in our class.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was really an amazing and the good thing is it was highly practical session, as opposed to some theoretical knowledge that people already have from the internet. So thank you very much, Prashant, for such an amazing, insightful say. I can see the comments and the feedback from the participant. It's a really, I think, very good feedback. And thank you very much. And we will see you in the course very soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your time, for being with us. And we will hope to see you again in our next sessions.
Okay. See you guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Prashant.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.